Call the meeting to order. I'm going to read a statement. I have been told I upset some parents in our towns last week when I spoke to Isaiah last week. And for that, I apologize. I mean no offense. I did not mean to create any hurt feelings. And again, I apologize. I have lived the life that Isaiah wrote about, where working was very important for the family income. It was my intent to make sure Isaiah and others would have Wednesdays off for their job. Jay is in the process of setting up a joint meeting with Isaiah, Dr. Conway, Jay, and myself. That is it for now. Moving to roll call.
All righty. So the regular opening, please bear with me. So in accordance with an act to implement provisions necessary to the health, welfare, and safety of the citizens of Maine in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency, as enacted to read Section G1 MRSA subsection 403A, public proceedings through remote access during declaration of state of emergency due to COVID-19. This business meeting is being held with a mix of in-person and virtually using Zoom. The meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the maranacook.org YouTube channel. Due to the change in format of this Board of Directors meeting, please be aware that during the course of this meeting, the microphones of the viewing audience will be muted except during the identified portions of public comments. For today's agenda, that is number 3. Part of this meeting is also for the budget, and citizen comment on the budget can be done at item 6B. There is a chat feature in Zoom, but we will not be utilizing this feature for the meeting. If you have any questions or comments, we respectfully ask that you contact the central office or email the superintendent or any other board member, and an answer will be provided to you as soon as possible. Thank you. Attendance and all votes will be done through roll call. When your name is called, board members, please cast your vote with the 3 available options of yes, which is approve, no, disapprove, or abstain. I'm going to proceed to the roll call vote before we move into the business part of the meeting. Kim.
Here.
There she is. Wendy. Here. Dane, we know, is absent tonight. He did contact me on Saturday, so. Kathy Jacobs. Here. Melissa. Not hearing anything. Alex.
Here.
Patty.
Here.
Rebecca.
Here.
Betty.
Here.
Sean.
Here.
Gary.
Here.
And David.
Here.
Thank you very much. We do have a couple of presentations we'll start with right away. If that's okay, I'd
Yep.
like to introduce, hold on just a sec, I'm going to get I'd like to introduce Mr. Ron Smith from RHR Smith and Company. He is the school district CPA. He's going to talk to us a little bit about our audit, excuse me. He is joining us through Zoom, so we'll do it that way, and he has a short presentation, and then if you have questions, he certainly can help answer those questions. Mr. Smith, it's all yours. Oh, he's just getting on, so we will wait for him to join us after that glowing introduction. Ron, can you hear us?
I hear you just fine. Did somebody say I got a glowing introduction?
You did.
Tell me more. I need to hear more. It's been a long year so far, so tell me more, please.
I talked about what a great CPA you are for the school district and how you are vital to the work that we do.
Well, we appreciate you too, and I'll tell you, it's tough being in education, you know, let alone financially. My heart's out to every one of you trying to put kids through a school system right now. My heart's out there coming with 4 young kids. God bless you all. So.
Well, the floor is all yours, Ron, if you'd like to talk to us a little bit about our audits, our yearly audit.
So how about I hit the highlights of it like I typically do?
Sounds good.
So I'm going to tell you probably the best way I can say it is where you are in 2020 is almost exactly where you were when you ended 2019, which I think is great. You know, because in 2019, I believe for the 20 budget that we audited, you guys used, I think, like $600,000 of carryover balance for tax stabilization money to balance your budget. And this next year, you know, you used $800,000 for the budget that's about to end, you know, in 3.5 months. So you didn't need it all. And to say that you're right where you are for many, many reasons. And I don't think that I would read in, you know, to anything about, you know, whether about, so your revenues came in favorable, unspent money. 2020 could be one of the worst years you could ever use as a benchmark to compare it to anything going forward because of COVID. You know, really the lack of expenses, maybe some extra expenses for sanitization and safety and things like that. So I think the fact that we just got to focus on the bottom line for this year, folks, you know, and the fact that, you know, that you ended the year with about $1.3 million of carryover balance, of which you used $800,000 for this budget this year. And the fact that the year before you ended with about $1.1 million, hats off. Financially, you know, you're better than where you expected to land on June 30, 2020. So the statutory, about 3% of your previous year's operating budget, carrying that forward, you're well within the statute. I think we might have talked about that last year. So I financially, you know, the best way I can say it, you landed, you know, in the middle of a pandemic, you know, right where you, you know, as right where you did the year before, which I think is certainly the best you could have done. So some of the conversations didn't roll this way with some other school systems for other reasons, but not for Maranacook. You know, you got a top shelf business manager who watches the pennies, and hats off to her. So.
Cool.
The other thing I would say is, I mean, if somebody says, "Hey, Ron, what's different this year?" You had a lot of capital projects going on in 2020 that carried into this year. You know, you certainly went out to a bond for all that. That's probably the one noticeable, you know, thing that I saw this year. You know, that you know, noticeable thing to talk about that anybody would see this year, of which I think that, you know, there was still almost like $2.5 million that rolled forward for projects this year, or finishing, you know, this year. So nothing unusual, nothing that you didn't expect, you know, for sure. So that's about the other thing that, you know, I would say was probably a highlight this year. Food service that we've talked about, you know, that pretty much landed a little bit better than where you guys expected it to than it did the year before. So not a lot, and there's not a lot of room for error in food service, but there was a trend, I believe, for the past couple of years that, you know, is heading south, you know, and certainly that went up a little bit by about almost $20,000 this year. So I think that's good, you know, because those conversations usually, you know, are not that good in food service, but it wasn't really that worthy of a talking point this year for Maranacook. So, and then the last thing that I would offer, you know, was student accounts. There was a couple of things, you know, with student accounts were some better practices that we talked about, Bridget, but nothing that I would say, hey, listen, you know, folks, you got big reasons to be alarmed. You know, just make sure, you know, when the kids use their money and pay their money, that the secretaries are attaching bills to them. You know, there were some outstanding checks, I think, that needed to be cleaned up, but nothing of any significance, really. Just housekeeping issues for student accounts.
Thank you.
Ron, hopefully within the next couple of days, I will have the draft audit back to you.
Yeah,
I'm
Bridget,
still
I don't
working on the
see
draft.
those numbers. I think that those numbers are tight, you know, for sure. So, yeah.
Okay.
Listen, I'd like to go back before I close, though. Can I just hear more about the glowing recommendation? Because I just want to hear the praise. I want to hear that.
The meeting's being recorded. The meeting's being recorded, so you can go back and play it multiple times right
All
from
right.
the beginning.
All right.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
listen,
much, Ron.
hats off, you guys. Hats off. You've heard me say this before in the past. You have, listen, I'm independent, and I've got no problem saying this. You got one of the best business managers in the state of Maine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you so much, Ron, for being here. We appreciate your time and this quick update on our audit.
Yeah. Listen, you all be well. Be safe too.
You as
Thank
well.
you.
Thank you.
Nuea.
All righty. So the next thing we've got for the board is Nuea. There was in the board packet that went out, there was a lot of information that included an article, the overall K through 12 math and reading, and then we have it broken down by schools, or excuse me, by levels. So the elementary results, the middle school results, and then the high school results. Keeping in mind the high school only does 9th and 10th grade at this time of year. So what we did is we put together a very short presentation that I believe is Nancy online. Yeah, okay. So Nancy is actually joining us online. She had a personal day today, and she's still joining us for this meeting. So I thought that was really nice of her to be able to do that. But since she is at home, Janet agreed to help with the presentation. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is, Janet's going to go through the presentation. Nancy will add in things as appropriate. Please keep track of your questions. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll open it up to questions and help kind of divert the questions where they need to go, if that works for everybody. So having said all of that, Janet, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, sounds good. So tonight, Diane is getting it all. I'm so glad it's her, not me, because I'd be like, setting up the presentation. So we have in your packet, also like Superintendent Charette said, is some other information, but you can refer to that and take your notes and ask some questions. So RSU 38 NWEA or NUEA results for winter 2021. So the district growth summary report. We have been giving the NUEA in the winter to all grades K to 10 for the last few years. You should have the winter growth summary for reading and math. And as you look at this slide, the blue bar shows average growth in reading from winter 20 to winter 21 for each grade level. So this graph only shows the results for students attending and testing in winter 20 and 21. The diamond is the average achievement usually expected for the grade. So you can see the 0, that's kindergarten, and there's no bar graph because they weren't tested the prior year. So what did we notice about the winter NUEA results? Well, less students were tested in each level than last year. The average scores overall were lower than the previous years, but growth was greater than we might have expected given the limited opportunities for learning due to the pandemic. The growth at some levels was more impacted by COVID than at others. For example, if you look at grade 2, those students were in first grade last year and lost 3 really important months of instruction. First grade has the most reading levels to achieve in 1 year, and students are still highly dependent on one-to-one in-person instruction, which obviously was restricted for safety reasons this year as well. Go on, please. Thanks. So more data. The principals also provided for you, like Mr. Charette said, with detailed data on grade by grade basis. So what you have is the number of students tested in winter 1920 and 21, and the percent of students scoring above average and below for each grade level. So how did staff use the data? So on this slide is really the big ideas in a nutshell of how we use this data. So what? How are they using it? At the K-12 level, staff are currently using this data with other evidence in their RTI teams to identify students with the greatest academic needs to receive extra support, including math or reading intervention when appropriate. At the elementary K-5 level, for example, I know at my schools that we've looked at a variety of data for all students with each teacher and the interventionist. So we've looked at the DRA, the Developmental Reading Assessment, foundational skills assessments that look at things like letter ID and letter sounds, all the way up to the upper grades that talk about prefixes and suffixes. We also use the IM math unit assessments and the NWEA. It's helped us adjust our pacing in some grades, prioritize key concepts that need reteaching, and plan for instruction to continue to support students' growth for now to the end of the year. Not all kiddos, not all students will need intervention, but that doesn't mean that they may not need some adjustment in their classroom instruction. At the middle school, each team does an analysis of their students' scores. They look at all of the students and also at the individualized level from winter to winter. As every grade level takes the NUIA, it is heavily used for guiding instruction for RTI. It's used for transition supports for incoming students. And after completing the NUIA assessments, the teachers did their team analysis where they were able to drill down for each student and see where the growth was for them. The results of the NUIA are used for providing in-classroom supports as well as small group intervention instruction. This year, due to the pandemic schedule, small cohorts and school scheduling, we've been able to provide more students with intervention at the Tier 3 level, providing this direct support to 25 to about 27% of the population at the middle school. In previous years, the threshold for district support, along with some other factors, was the NUIA percentile around 34% and below in the content areas. Now it is approximately at the 40th percentile and below, with some discrepancy based on the student need at either end. The focus is really on individual student growth, helping them go from where they are to where they need to be. At the high school, we assess students in 9th and 10th grade in reading and math. The data is analyzed initially by RTI teams and the math and literacy interventionists. That data is then used by interventionists in process monitoring meetings with teachers. And during the meeting, the interventionists support teachers in improving their Tier 1 instruction. In addition to this, the 9th grade academy uses the data to foster conversations and support students across content areas. This is done each time the test is given. As a school, we use the NWA as a universal screener to identify students for Tier 2 and 3 intervention. So just when I'm talking about that, Tier 1 is what we provide for all students. All students access their classroom Tier 1 instruction. Tier 2 and Tier 3 are the levels of intervention support they may receive. So students who score below the 35th percentile are referred for Tier 3 interventions. And these students need extra support with skills to assess the curriculum. This coming Friday, we will be using the Notice and Wonder protocol with the NUIA growth plots to help dig deeper into data and identify trends. Lastly, we've used the NUIA as one data point in helping to place incoming 9th graders for courses for their freshman year. The NUIA are used along with the classroom grades, the MEAs, HOW grades, and teacher recommendations to support students with transition. So that was a lot of information, and we'll go forward to talk about what we're doing for planning next. So in your packet, it was referred to a brief article called Don't Remediate, Accelerate, and that kind of reflects the professionally recognized thinking that's happening out there with students in schools. So on this slide is really talking about the approaches that our research has shown are not effective and approaches that are more effective. So we are all concerned about delays in the learning due to the pandemic and realize it may take time to get all students back on level. And it's just really important for all of us to know it's no one's fault. We want to avoid punitive actions that may have unintended consequences as students move up through the grades. At the K-5 level, this means strengthening the consistency of classroom instruction in the district curriculum. And that's what we mean by the Tier 1, the everyday classroom curriculum that all students have a guaranteed access. Implementing the district policy for retention in grades, which includes an in-depth look at growth data over time and a joint decision by family and staff. Encourage students to self-assess, set goals, and monitor their own progress. And working more closely with middle school staff to prioritize concepts and skills students need for 6th grade. At the middle school, in grades 6 to 8, as with the elementary schools, we're concerned about delays in learning as a result of the pandemic restraints on education. Staff has spent time both late spring, this fall, and now considering critical and non-critical content in the curriculum. The curriculum work completed by teachers supported the goal of a consistent deliverable format, which included the necessary units of study with essential questions, concepts, content, and skills to help students, to prepare students for the next grade level as staff spend time looking over at the scope and sequence of the curriculum. The middle school uses habits of work as one way for students to self-assess, set goals, and monitor their own progress, as success looks different for each individual. Remember, the goal is to have students progress based on their own individual strengths and abilities to ultimately get them ready for the high school. This year, work has been done during staff meetings with the high school staff to collaborate and help support the transition process from middle school to high school. At the high school, grades 9 to 12, we have looked at our curriculum and have identified key learning in each content area. We understand that students may have gaps, but by identifying those key concepts, we're able to pre-assess students and fill in some gaps. This year, we understand that the NUIA scores may not reflect where a student should be placed, though. We want to give all students a chance to achieve and thrive in the academic involvement at the high school. Due to the hybrid schedule, the high school has a population of students who are remote learners, with some who are fully remote. We have been working to bring back the fully remote students to school. Many students who are fully remote have been successful, while some have struggled. Some of these students who have struggled may face even bigger gaps in learning. Based on this, we have begun the discussion about retaining students who are not attending. To further support students with encouragement and positive behavior, we initiated the Habits of Work 7 years ago. The category students are measured on are collaborative worker, quality learner, and responsible learner. So more thinking about planning forward. The priority schools, we are working to support student learning going forward. We're looking at what does it mean to provide summer programs. We're going to focus on preparing to transition to the next level. We're going to prioritize growth, provide additional supports for tier 1, that classroom instruction, and really focus on partnering with families. These are the things, our priorities with planning underway, and we're going to keep working on that right up through the end of the school year. So stay tuned. And this is the question time.
So the principals are all here. Nancy is online. So now if there's questions about scores or anything that Janet presented, we certainly can take a few minutes and talk through the questions that you might have. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Go ahead.
You mentioned a lot of interventions. Who will intervene for the interventionists, and will we need to hire more staff to make up for all the interventions, or will this be done in groups to help kids keep accelerating in their classes?
So remember, we've got an interventionist, literacy interventionist in every building. Right now in Wayne, it's a half-time position. We also have an interventionist in math that is also half-time, but we have a single interventionist dedicated specialist in every building at this time. Wayne has a half math, half literacy person. We also have some literacy ed techs in every school so that they can actually support the work of what the interventionists are doing with those students. So that's kind of our structure at this point. When you look at the scores that we have, I know like when you look at them quickly, you go, oh my goodness, would we want to hire more people if we could? Absolutely. But the question that comes with that is, number one, who's going to kind of be able to pay for that? And the second question is, can we get qualified people for those positions? Because that's something that you really do need a specialty. And so you would want to make sure we have really good hires in those positions. We don't want to hire someone and then have to spend a lot of time training them, because then the time with the students becomes minimized at that point. So definitely there's this pot of money that's hanging out there again, coming from the federal government, and based on recommendations from my administrators and the interventionists themselves, I may be coming back to you and suggesting we use some of that money for interventionists interventionists if we can find qualified people. But we're still in a holding pattern when it comes to that money. So, yeah. Nancy, have I missed anything there?
I think the only thing in respect to that question, because it's the first question I think that most of us ask, but is that we recognize that no matter how many interventionists we had, you have to, if you're going to pull students out of their classroom instruction to do intervention, then they're missing their grade level instruction. So I think our goal is to try to provide more support to classroom teachers for the tier 1 instruction, and what kind of staff can best do that with enough supervision and enough background and training, I think we haven't all figured out yet.
And I
But
also
we
think
want kids working on grade level.
Yeah, I also think it goes back to that slide where it talks about we're planning for instruction. We're looking at how we might adjust pacing and how we are going to provide, like she said, really robust tier 1 instruction to help boost kids. Thinking of those priority concepts and what they need to learn in order to move forward.
Kathy.
Thank you.
So actually, that was going to be my question. You mentioned additional supports for tier 1, which is probably the most important place that we can put our resources right now. So my question was, is there other staff that we need to hire to do additional supports? Because how's that going to look? Who's going to be doing those additional supports? But before even that, I just wanted to say that when I looked through this, the scores were actually better than I anticipated they were going to be, given what we've just been through. So I think that we're in a pretty good place given what the last year. So I appreciate that, and thank you, Janet, for all the information. Thank you.
Sean?
So I guess the first question, we're talking about like next school year, but is there any thought before? I mean, I've seen other examples, and I'm a believer. I know some people don't like it when you talk about what other districts are doing, but other districts are having academies during April break where they're offering to pay current staff, or over the summer. And I think some students would take advantage of that and some families would. I don't think we should be waiting till next school year to make that happen and say, we can't quite qualified staff, because we can use the qualified staff we have.
Right.
And those bucks can be used to pay them.
We absolutely, Sean, are looking at a summer programming, and we actually meet Monday to start planning that. And that's part of what I submitted with the ESSER grant, was a fairly substantial amount of money to book summer programming for 2 years across K through 12. So it's not just credit recovery at the high school or anything like that. So we're trying to make it a very, again, robust program. So we haven't had discussions around like the April Academy as an example, but that's certainly a unique idea. Diane. Oh, Kim.
I don't know. I'll let Kim, you can come back to me.
Okay, so Kim, you're up.
This might be a really basic question, but I was wondering if I found the reading very interesting. But I was wondering, excuse me, if you can give me an example, and maybe you can, I don't know, maybe this is too broad, but an example of a key concept that you would focus on and I don't care what grade, but like for a fifth grader that they may have missed in fourth grade, just so that I have an understanding of kind of what that is or looks like or what that means.
Nancy, are you comfortable fielding that question?
I was just looking to see, I would like to ask Abby Schenk, our math coach for K-12, to address that, because she's been working a lot with fourth grade teachers actually on some of those concepts. Fourth grade is one of those grades where there were some key things they were missing from third grade. So Abby, do you want to answer that? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay? I'm on the road, so.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so actually I was meeting with some fourth grade teachers today talking about that exact thing. And they've spent a lot of time with their students up to this point in the school year working on fractions, comparing, ordering, and operating with fraction numbers. And they've had to spend a lot more time on it this year because when their students were in third grade last year, school closed before they got to their fraction unit, which is a huge piece of third grade learning and happened to be starting in March. So they really started off the fourth grade year without any fraction knowledge, really.
Would you like me to talk till Abby reappears?
That would be great.
Okay.
Same with the fourth grade with decimals. I know that unit, there's a lot of repacing and reorganizing that for fifth grade too, Nancy. I know that's been a conversation too.
And I just wanted to mention about the add-in packs. And Kim may be aware of this because I think it might have been mentioned in curriculum committee, but I'm not positive, but that the curriculum we're using this year, the IM curriculum, what they did was, knowing that lots of students had missed the previous grades last 2 or 3 months, they looked at key concepts for each unit for this year, and they created add-in packs with extra lessons pulled from the previous grade that were right in the teacher's manual, or that the teachers could pull out really easily to use, so that kids would get that background knowledge that they might have missed. And it isn't like they spent weeks and weeks on them, but they were designed to be, 2 or 3 days to fill in some gaps before they moved forward. So I think there's 2 things that, from what I've heard from Abby, that they're doing with respect to this. One is they did have some add-in lessons. Second, they've adjusted the pacing for this year. And third, the publisher, if it turns out we're still using that curriculum next year, they are going to make some adjustments in the fifth grade based on what the impact of COVID, because especially it isn't the same at all grade levels. But at fourth grade, it really had a big impact on kids. And so they're going to make adjustments for that in the curriculum for next year. So again, there are those add-in places that if they're needed. Does that help answer the question?
I think so. Yeah, I guess I'm with those key concepts. So the pacing, that all makes sense. So how long would it be anticipated before they would be, based on that, and obviously pacing, be anticipated that they would potentially catch up? Let's use fourth to fifth, since that seems to be the example. I mean, I understand that there are going to be people who fall behind and all that, but generally speaking, when are they back to a typical curriculum for the grade that they're in?
And that is the $1 million question.
Hey, I like $1 million. So send me the money.
It's going to depend on the student. It's going to depend on the age they were and what they missed. And it's going to depend on how well we're able to be flexible and on top of things with the tier 1 instruction, as they continue to go through. There's no goal of going back and filling every hole with every little lesson that any kid might have missed, because that we know from our experience with intervention students, that's a lose-lose proposition. You're never going to catch up. The gap just gets wider. What we want to do, though, is find those most important things that are like prerequisite for the next thing you have to do. Like you can't learn to add and subtract or multiply and divide fractions if you don't understand equivalent fractions and stuff. And those were some of the pieces that they missed, that they are taking time to go back and do some firsthand experiences with to make sure they grasp those concepts. How long will it take before that all washes out? I don't think we know. I think that's what we're going to be using, and the assessment is, the NUI isn't a direct assessment of everything that's taught in class, but we're going to be looking really carefully at those scores and of course the unit assessments for kids as we go along and try to do the best we can, and we'll try to keep you informed.
Thank you. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. Sean, I know you still had another question or follow-up.
Yeah, I think I found the answer, but I mean, I think the unknown at looking at this is you have a good percentage of kids that we have no idea where they're at. And I think that's going to be the wild card. Is you have kids, some kids may be ahead. They may be getting homeschooled or doing virtual. We don't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
And I think that's the wild card. So, they could have done nothing.
Right.
So I think that's going to be the huge wild card when these kids show back up in school. And
I think another thing to think about is earlier in the presentation, we talked about first grade, and first grade is the year they have the most reading levels to go through, and they missed a really critical third part of the year, that March to June. And so I think some of it's going to matter on what our school looks like in the fall, because again, the younger the students, at the elementary level I can speak to, they really need that in-person, very focused instruction that they might get in a guided reading group. And that's hard to do when you have to follow, safety mandates that we are all following. So that impacts their growth as well. So it's like Nancy said, it's the $1 million question, or maybe Kim asked, like, how fast is this going to be? And we're not sure.
And because you look at the grade 5, or I don't know if it's grade 5, but the overall testers, I mean, there's 60 some odd kids missing.
Yep.
So yeah, the data may look great, but those 60 some odd kids, we have no idea what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And just one other thing, this is a great point you bring up, Sean. There's not only a lot of kids missing, but even when we look at, we can print out like scatter plots for each chart that show the high achievers, but low growth and low achievement, low growth, et cetera, in 4 quadrants. There's more diversity. I mean, the kids are spread all over every page already, and we don't even have a lot of those kids back that may,
Right.
Also be in the fringes or in different corners of the distribution. So I think while we have a good idea that we need to really target and strengthen tier 1 instruction, it's not going to be that easy, because teachers are going to have much more diversity in their classes.
Correct. Thank you.
Betty?
I have a comment and a question. First, comment. It sounds like that math curriculum is really helpful in that they are targeting specific, and they've been much more a book, a curriculum that comes from a book would not have been able to come up with the add-ons that you were describing. So it sounds like that curriculum, just from that description, is really beneficial. This is a question, and it has to do with the Maine State testing. I know that they're going to be doing Maine State testing this year. Do you know when that is happening, which I'm sure you do? And also, do you know what that's going to look like?
That's a great question. So Maine is going to be using the NUIAs for grades 3 through 8th grade, as well as grade 11. That's official now. They actually gave a very wide window. The window is actually already open right now for your spring tests and it goes through basically the end of May. We're going to test the way I say test. We're going to do the NUIAs at the time that we've always done them, traditionally in the springtime. Just now we have to make sure we do 3 through 8 and grade 11. So grade 11 will actually be taking the test for kind of the first time. It's important to note that, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in depth at the curriculum meeting coming up in April, but the thing that's important to know is this is only a 2-year, it's this year and next year. So the state has accountability and score measures that they have to meet. The NUIA is going to meet that, I believe, for the requirements for the feds. But it's certainly going to be a very interesting couple of years here. But we will be using the NUIA 3 through 8 for their test and grade 11. We will be doing the science like we normally do in the spring as well. And that's, correct me if I get the grades wrong, I believe it's 5, 8, and 11. And that will be online, and that's going to continue the way it is. That's not NUIA, that's a different company. So, yeah. Nancy, you want to add anything there?
I just think it's important that everyone knows that that science MEA this year is the new science MEA. So it's based on next generation science standards, which our science curriculum is based on. But this is going to be challenging when we've had hybrid instruction all year and there's been limited time, you know, for the full science curriculum. It hasn't really been able to be implemented. So.
And this goes back, I'll add one more thing just very quickly. I apologize. It goes back to what Sean just said. We actually have to find a way to get those at-home learners to take that NUIA in the spring here. So that will help us gather more information, obviously, but it is something participation-wise. We are going to be reaching out to those families, and there is going to be a remote option. I haven't seen the details on how that's going to look and all that kind of stuff yet, but all of those logistics are coming out for us. So, so we got a lot to think about in the spring when it comes to NUIA testing, and the state results will match what we're using, which is kind of nice. Go ahead.
And the science. I mean, we're accountable for at least 95% of our students taking the science also. That includes the students who are learning at home, supported learning at home. And so they cannot do that remotely. They have to come on campus to take it. So this is going to be challenging to figure out how we're going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with the state that they are using the NUIA so that our kids are not overly assessed. I'm dismayed that this is only for 2 years again. So I wish the state would get it together.
So the summer school that we're going to run, how many kids do you intend to have in that?
We are just, like I said, we're having our first meeting on Monday to start to talk about logistics and what the curriculum is going to look like. I'm not going to say it's going to be open to everyone, but that's kind of where we're leaning, is trying to get as many students as we can that want to participate. We're looking to try to do that. That's why there's a significant chunk of money there. So that's the goal right now, is to try to get as many as we can, but I don't have that mapped out yet by any stretch of the imagination. So, other questions?
See none. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy, for being online, and Janet, thank you very much for running the presentation here. Well done.
Janet. Janet, you have a really nice voice. I just.
Citizens' comments?
So I don't see anyone here, but anyone that's online that would like to make a comment, if you could put it in the chat box or use the raised hand feature. Diane McGregor's running the meeting and she'll be on the lookout for us. We'll wait just a minute to see if there's anyone that would like to make a public comment before we move on from our online audience.
None.
Looks like there's none. So
Additions or adjustments to the agenda? Go ahead, Patty.
I just was thinking when you were talking about summer school and when both the auditor gave his report and Janet gave her beautiful, and Nancy gave their beautiful report, I hope that when the next COVID stimulus money comes, whatever it's called, I'm sorry, I can never remember what's what,
Yeah.
but that we can, and I know you and the administrators are already working to figure out how that will be used, and it's awesome. I also know you shared with us how the past two packages have been used, which is wonderful. I just hope we give a lot of attention to teaching things directly related to teaching and learning. I feel like in the first two packages, we had to do things related to safety that were facilities related, super important and crucial and a must. But I think that supporting summer school, helping interventionists, more interventionists, reaching students who are remote that we haven't reached, all of those things that we've talked about throughout this whole year, it would just be wonderful if we could make that stuff a priority. Thank you. I can't.
Oh, Sean's got it.
Go ahead, John.
And I guess just to add to that, if we can kind of be kept up to date at each meeting where, I mean, I know under the rules that you have the right to spend that money, but it's kind of been a issue at many levels that the money just gets spent and
Yeah.
people, I mean, you did a great job.
Yeah.
I don't have any issues, but I just hope we can be kept up to date as those decisions are being made. And then not really an addition, but I know usually we have the sports teams come, and I just wanted to congratulate the boys on winning their championship. And it was pretty fun to watch. I know my kids and I enjoyed it. And the girls team did a really good job. And then the ski teams, and I know no one could watch them, but just kind of wanted to and we would have them here, congratulate them. And also thank Brant for all his hard work. He was always on YouTube, whether it be at hockey or basketball, always trying to highlight the teams, and happy to see spring sports. It looks like it's going to happen. So very exciting, but just want to congratulate everybody and thank everybody for all the hard work, because I'm sure it was extremely hard on all involved.
Thank you very much, Sean. I've been teasing Brant that he's gonna, for those of you that know college basketball, that he was becoming Dick Vitale on the play-by-play there. So.
And he learned more about hockey as the season went on, because I think his first couple games he was a little confused. So you can tease him.
Could I just piggyback on that also with all the sports stuff? We also usually see and do the little clap, 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 shake hands with the top 10 high school students. And I miss that too. And so congratulations to all of them from us.
That's great.
Yeah, we will actually try to do some sort of formal recognition with both of those groups before the year is done. So we will figure it out for sure.
I move to approve the minutes of March 10th, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion?
That's my cue.
Roll call.
All righty. Kim,
Abstain?
Wendy,
Yes.
Dana's not here. Kathy,
Yes.
Melissa is not here. I apologize. Alex,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
and David.
Yes.
So if I'm counting right, that's 9 yeses and 1 abstention. Cool.
Updates to the budget.
Updates to the budget. So if you guys will hang on just a sec, Donna's going to hand out a packet to you, and I will walk you through the updates first from that. Get mine in front of me.
Hey, while we're waiting, I should have also just said the way we also do the congratulations to the 8th graders who are high honors all the time before they go to high school. So sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, thank you. Greg? And I will always preface the meeting by saying, Bridget, feel free to jump in anytime if I misspeak on anything. So So the first page is a front to back. You'll see that the budget has not changed from last week. It is still up about $519,000 at 2.75%. So nothing has changed on that as of yet. Important to note that we will be starting to get our health insurance updates in terms of what our percentage increase is going to be. So we're hoping we can deduct a little bit from that as well. And then we have a couple other minor adjustments. One other thing that worries me when I look at that is the price of oil. And today I found out that propane has also gone up significantly. So that is something we are going to have to try to absorb within what we currently have kind of budgeted there. But it is something that is up significantly. And to our surprise, like I said, we found out today propane was up almost 40 plus cents higher than what we had budgeted for. So yeah, so again, we're going to try to watch how things play out over the course of the next couple of months and try to make sure we get the best deal, obviously, that we can when we book for oil. So oil and propane, I apologize. So that's kind of where we are with that. If you flip the page over, I know it's not green this time. Usually it's green to signify money, but on the back side is the revenue. Yeah, well, it's true, right? So on the back side is the revenue that matches kind of what's on the front side there. That hasn't changed either. We did send an email today asking for the adjustment for the superintendent's agreements. We've been talking about those quite a bit. There is an adjustment coming for that, and we were told today that they are working on it and we should be seeing it soon. So hopefully, again, by the next time I bring another version of this budget forward, we'll be able to add that in. Right now, we just don't have it at this particular time. So again, nothing has changed on the back side of the paper, just so you know, but wanted to give you guys kind of a frame of reference. So before we leave that page, something that I need to kind of say and be very transparent about is we are not going to hit a 0% increase. The only way to do that, you guys, would be to start talking positions. And I'm not recommending that in any way, shape, or form. But if we're going to be looking to try to make significant cuts to try to make up somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $400,000, that's positions we're going to have to talk about. So I just kind of wanted to be transparent about that. When in terms of, I call it nickel and diming, and I know that sounds really bad, but when you go through a budget line by line and start nickel and diming stuff, you're not going to make up $300,000 or $400,000. You might get lucky and make up, $80,000 or $90,000, and that would be really stretching it, to be quite honest. So I just want to be very clear with that. The other thing to think about when it comes to positions, if that is a directive I'm given by the board, that's something that needs to happen sooner rather than later so we can meet contractual obligations. So I put it out there. I'm not recommending it. I want to be clear about that. I'm not recommending that, but I also want to be transparent about kind of where we are in the budget process. There still is some adjustments, but they're not going to bring it down to zero. So I had to be very honest about that with you guys at this point. So having said that, let's go through the next couple pages. So the next page in your packet is the district student prorations. So it's the discussion we had last week. We broke it down. We have 3 sheets behind that. So what we did is if we only use resident students, which seemed to be the general consensus of the board last week, this is what the percentages break down to be: the number of students in each town, putting each student where they belong, and taking out superintendent agreements. So we're just dealing just with residents, and any in-district transfers are put back in their original town, okay? Mm-hmm. So then the second proration is that what we currently have been using for many, many years. That's what we've been using. And that is where we include superintendent agreements, and they are shared among the elementary schools, when it comes to, am I saying that right? Bridget can help me with that. I always
The
mess this one
elementary
up.
school superintendent's agreements are charged to the school that they are attending.
Sorry. And what we did is with the middle school and high school, then we share those among the towns for the middle school and the high school students. I always mix those two up. Thank you, Bridget. And then the third one is again, an idea that came up from the last meeting. What if we take all superintendent agreements, regardless of what school they go to, and we just spread them evenly across all 4 towns, regardless of the level, elementary, middle, or high school, everyone's getting the same number of superintendent agreements. So that's what you're looking at there. So then the first page, which is, I believe, a light green this time. No, it doesn't represent money this time. Well, it sort of does, but the light green one is based on what it would look like per town, the local share per town. So keep in mind the valuation drives this a whole lot. So remember that conversation we had last week about valuation, number of students, high evaluation, low number of students, that kind of thing, as you're looking at that. So that's the first one. This was the one that was a general consensus of the board. Remember, we also have a 3-year rolling average. So what we did is we left the last 2 years the same and have rolled in this one, this resident only, to that new average. So it'll take a couple of years to roll that through if we're going to stick with that. So if you follow that down at the bottom, follow it all the way across, you can see kind of what the breakdown is by town going across and what the average is for the district. The second page, which is light blue, this is the one that we've always done. This is the one we have used consistently in the past. Nothing has changed about it. The superintendent agreements are where they're supposed to be in terms of the elementary schools and then split across the middle school and high school. This is the formula we've always used. So again, you can see what the breakdown looks like, any changes that might result in higher or lower payouts or local contribution, I should say, per student. And then finally, the last page is if we were to take, and it's purple, if we were to take all superintendent agreements and spread them evenly across the 4 towns. So that is something in order to build going forward or to finish building going forward, we need to make a decision tonight about, for sure, which one are we using? And you've got basically 3 options that you guys gave us. And thank you to Mandy and Bridget for pulling all of this together because they're the ones that did the work to get this all ready. So having said that to you, that's kind of where we are right now budget-wise. Yeah. That's a lot of information there, so. Yeah.
Pretty significant increase for Reedfield.
Yeah.
Am I, the resident only one that's the one that matches most with the way the state does it?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Is the first step we need to choose one of these? Is that what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I think, well, and I don't know if you guys want to listen to citizen comments first and then go into deliberations to finalize this.
Gotcha.
Might be a good thing to do just so that if there's anyone online that would like to make a comment, we can hear that before we move on. That's my suggestion. So again, if there's anyone online that would like to speak about the budget and what was just presented in my update, please signal to Diane McGregor online and she'll facilitate getting you into the meeting. So we will wait a couple minutes here. It does not look like we've got any comments from online, so I think board can go into deliberations at this point. Gary Alex has got his hand up.
Go ahead.
So Jay, I think I sent you this question in an email. So when it comes to superintendent agreements, the state doesn't distribute the money specifically to the school itself, but it just
Right.
gives the money to the district and then the district
That's it.
appropriates it
Right.
proportionally.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So there's no like, for instance, 10 students go to Mount Vernon. The state's not going to pay the Mount Vernon Elementary School
Right.
10 students.
Right, exactly.
They're just going to pay the district
Right.
the total amount.
Right.
All right.
Right.
Just to make that
Yeah.
clear.
Yep, good question. Just so you guys know, again, we also have to use the October 1st student counts. Know that our numbers go up and down through the course of the year. People move in, people move out. Also, when it comes to superintendent agreements, the same kind of thing happens where you'll get more that jump in and more that'll jump out. The question was asked last week, and I wanted to bring you numbers. As of the 11th, we checked what our superintendent numbers were. We have 54 superintendent agreements coming in, and we have 28 going out. So obviously we have a net of about 26 or so students there, or 26, yeah, about 26 students that are coming in. So, and that's been the case for the last several years. So where we're getting more in than are going out. So just so you guys are kind of know the number, we can go back and research if we wanted to look at the October 1st number, but it's probably going to be somewhere in that range for the most part. Sean's gonna
Go ahead, Sean.
How does that work for a kid who goes to a charter school? I know it's like divide, but how does that work for money? The money just doesn't come in?
Right. The money follow. Think of it as the money follows the child.
Yeah, I was
So
trying to remember. I remember
yeah.
there was a whole battle.
great question though. So when it comes to charter schools, the money basically follows the child. So
Sort of like supers agreements.
Yeah. the difference on the superintendent agreement is we do get an allocation on the state on the first part of the ED 279 because they're students in our school district. So we get them on the front end of the calculation, but we do, and like I said, then we have that adjustment later on because there's a couple different calculations, but we do get superintendent agreement. We do get money for those because we count them on the front end on the enrollment side, so.
Go ahead, Chuck. Bill?
Okay, so for me, to kind of get the ball rolling, in principle, I think I said this last time, I do support the residents only, mostly because it's the residents that actually contribute to the valuation of that town. So in my head, that makes sense to me. But
Is that
that's right.
Is that a motion?
No. Do you want it to be a motion? I can make it a motion.
Second it if you were making it.
Oh, okay.
That's why I asked.
Actually, okay, I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we move forward with residents only.
I will second it.
Further discussion? Vote.
Roll call? Yeah, oh, sorry, I apologize. All right, so here we go. Kim,
I'm sorry, I'm looking at all that paperwork on a really tiny screen, so I can't follow it all, so I'm just going to abstain because
okay.
it's too hard.
Wendy,
Residents make the most sense to me. I'm going to say yes.
okay. Kathy,
I'm not sure that I've got enough information yet in my head after looking at all these numbers to be ready to vote yet. So I think I'm going to abstain.
Alex,
Yes.
Patty,
I am, yes.
yes. Rebecca,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
and David.
Yes.
All right. So 8 yes and 2 abstentions. And that was Kim and Kathy. All right. So April 7 is when I expect to be able to bring you the number, kind of another version of this budget. Because like I said, by then we'll have a lot of the holes filled in that we just don't have answers to right now. So I will keep you guys posted. What's that?
Was there any, go ahead, Sean.
Oh, you go
Well, I
ahead.
saw Wendy.
Okay, no, I think I'm third in line, so.
Go ahead, Wendy.
I have a question when you said April 7th. Will there be a meeting next Wednesday
There's
then?
no meeting next Wednesday because I won't have anything new budget-wise to be able to share with you guys.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
everybody knows that. Okay,
Right.
great.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking that one.
Next 2 weeks you have off
Yeah,
on Wednesday.
So it's next one's April 7th.
April 7 will be our next one. Yes.
Oh, sorry, Patty.
My question was at the April 7th meeting, is that when we'll go through what, we'll have more information?
Yes.
And more information, more holes filled in, and we'll be able to go through everything.
Yeah.
And
Yep, absolutely. Because then the next meeting, I believe, is April 14th when you actually vote on the budget so we can get everything printed and get ready for the annual meeting. So. Mhm. All righty.
Do we have any citizens comments? Oh, Sean?
So I guess I'm just gonna say, I mean, not gonna hide it. This is a pretty significant increase, in my opinion. With the money that we also, I mean, we've spent, I get it had to be used for certain things,
Yeah.
but we're getting a, significant amount of money from, we've got, I don't want to say the numbers, but I'll say them wrong. So I guess I just want to be very, and I'm sure you will be very cautious that we don't add any more positions. Like I know we say talking about hiring interventions, but this is a pretty significant increase. Gas, oil, all those things are going up. I actually got a call today from a family bit, not that I own it, but my father-in-law bounces things off of me. Price of diesel is going up pretty significantly, and it's having a huge effect on people. And if the oil and propane are going to have an effect on us as a school, imagine what it's doing to my neighbor, your neighbor, and all our neighbors who are struggling to get by. And the economy is going to get tougher. And again, I think we need all the teachers, but I think we really need to be, it's tough times, but I think it's going to get tougher before things get better. And I don't know. I think this is, I'll support this because I support the kids. I think they're going to need the help, but I think we need to be really cautious. And I think this is I want to be on the record is that this is a significant increase. This is very significant.
Yeah, class size is very important. We need to look at that.
And I guess I'll follow that up with, if I'm not suggesting there needs to be cuts, but I think we really need to look at, we are maximizing every program from K to 12 for all our students. Is there a program that only has 3 kids in it? Yeah, it's great to offer everything and be everything for all, but sometimes that's not a reality. And I think we need to look at those programs from K to 12 and to make sure we're maximizing that benefit for the students and the maximized students, and we're meeting those class sizes. So, because the April 7th meeting, we're going to be up against the wall that we have to vote for a budget. And I don't like being up against the wall. We've been up against the wall too many times, I feel. So I want to get that out there tonight, that I think this is a very significant increase.
So if you have some of those numbers by the 31st, should we have a meeting just to deal with this budget? You know, if we have the numbers and we have all the things in, I think we should come in. Just put that down as a tentative at this point. Just for the budget only. That's all will be discussed.
Gary.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I also have a question for Jay. So Jay, are you still trying to work down the 2.75%?
Absolutely, yes. We're not getting a little down,
Okay.
but it's not going to be zero. That's why.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you. So Alex's question was, am I still working on the budget? And absolutely I am. We're still going to continue to look for places that we can work on it. And I think Sean's point is a great point. That's something that we have been struggling with, is what that number looks like. So we're going to continue to work on it. And I absolutely will keep you guys informed along the way here. So that way you don't feel like you're surprised with anything. So.
Thank you, Jay.
I just want to say that I agree with what Sean said, and that we really should look at the curriculum and make sure that we're taking advantage of all the opportunities for all the students. But like what he said, it is the reality of the situation. And if we're not meeting it well enough, then we probably should take a look at it.
So the summer school is already paid.
So summer school will be through the ESSER grant, and I did submit that. I'm just waiting for confirmation on that. And I will keep you guys posted as soon as I hear something on that, so that you guys know. And our plan is for 2 years of summer programming, because we know we're going to need it. I know we're talking about, but the same thing is we want to use that experience to be able to build something that's sustainable going forward as well. We don't want it to just be a two-shot, we're all done and we're not doing anything else. We really want it to be sustainable, and we're hoping we're in better times at that point to be able to bring that forward. But we'll use our experiences to our advantage at this point.
Citizens comments? Any citizens comments?
Looks like there's none.
Okay, last item.
I move we go into executive session to investigate complaints against a person or persons pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A.
Second.
All right, I do have to take roll call votes, so bear with me for just a second. Kim,
Yes?
Wendy,
Yes.
Kathy? Yes. Melissa? Oh, sorry. Alex?
Yes.
Patty?
Yes.
Rebecca?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
And David?
Yes.
All right. So if there's anyone online, we are going to put you into a waiting room, and when the executive session is over, we will bring you back in. Board members, it'll take just a couple minutes for Diane to make the switch here, so.
I move that we,
Oh, hold on. Diane, are you all set? You're all set. Sorry about that, Betty. I didn't mean to.
I move that we remove Gary Carr as chair of the board.
Second.
And Rebecca, you seconded that. Any further discussion? I'm going to do a roll call vote. Kim,
Gary, I really appreciate all that you have done, but I'm going to vote yes.
Wendy,
No.
Kathy, yes. Alex,
No.
Patty,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Gary,
No?
and David.
Yes.
So the motion carries 7 yes and 3 no. What this means for the rest of the meeting is that Wendy Brotherland, Vice Chair, will run the meeting, and we will bring nominations for a new chair at our April 7 meeting. Wendy will be the one to start that meeting, and then we'll proceed from there.
Second. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't
sorry.
vote yet.
I just am wondering if I'd be interested in putting out some type of statement to put a closure to this, not about removing the board chair, but that we welcome all. I don't know if anyone else is interested, but it's just a thought. We need to put a closure to this.
I agree.
somehow.
I agree.
I don't think it's not about the board chair vote. It's
No.
about, we welcome everyone.
That we
to
are
come to the board.
open to people coming here. Any of our community members,
I agree.
and that we want to hear from them.
I would encourage, if there's anyone from the board that's comfortable, maybe drafting that and then sharing with the rest of the board. That would be the way to go.
Well, I'm a wordsmith by profession, so does anyone want to work with me on it, or? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
I move, we adjourn.
Second.
all right.
All in favor? Yeah.
Yes.
Adjourn.
Yes, I need the statements back, yes.